Hello, I'm Walt Black. I'm one of the Williamson County Master Gardeners, and we're going to discuss today irrigation and, more importantly, what happens when something goes wrong and you need to fix it or you need to modify the system for some reason. But why do we irrigate to begin with? Well, it's to keep plants alive and flourishing. And why do we want to do it properly? Well, one is to conserve water, the other is to save money, and obviously to reduce weeds, which are always kind of pesky at times. So what happens when something goes wrong or we need to make a modification? Well, it wastes water, plants die, and the cost goes up. So any repairs to the system need to be timely and economical, and most of these you can do yourself. And if you need to modify the system, that's easily done too. If you have a different plant or a mature plant that grows quite a bit over time and you need to change the system somewhat. But let's look at some of the parts and pieces that make up this irrigation system. One of the first things is a backflow preventer. And it looks something like this. You'll see different variations of this. But essentially, it's to prevent water from the irrigation side to backflow into the potable water side of the system. And this is very important to prevent any contamination of your potable water system. You should also have a filter in your system. This prevents any grit and sand and things like that from getting in your irrigation system and plugging up any small orifice that should be sending water out to the plants. You should also have some motorized valves that regulate the various zones. They'll electrically open to let the water flow to the plants, and then they'll close depending on how you have your program set up on your controller. Another thing is a pressure reducer, and that's very important. It looks something like this. This particular one, it will reduce the pressure from, say, city water of 60 pounds per square inch down to 25 pounds per square inch, which is ideal for a small irrigation system. This prevents any blowout due to high pressure on some of these small lines that you may have. Another thing at the far end of the system is some sort of emitter to actually put the water out to the plant. Here I have somewhat of a mock-up here. A typical system may be underground PVC pipe, and then at various places you may transition from PVC over to black poly tubing. And so that's what I've done here to go from PVC underground. There's a coupling here that is only about $4 or $5 into the plastic black tubing, which will go through your irrigation system. Once you get near a plant, then you transition over to a 1/4 inch tubing, and then finally to an emitter that will actually put the water at the plant. Now this particular emitter, it can be regulated by just turning this knob. You can either increase the flow or decrease the flow. One thing that may happen is it'll get a little bit of grit in it over time, and you'll notice when you're doing your periodic maintenance checks that the water may not be flowing properly. So you can just unscrew this top very carefully, hang on to it, and the water will flow out through the nozzle here. Then you can clean this emitter by tapping it on a rock or something and blowing on it, and then carefully put it back in place. Now, one thing to be cautioned about: if you don't screw it on somewhat a turn or two, the water flowing through it will vibrate and cause this thing to come loose, and it will fly off and you'll never find it, and you'll have to replace the emitter, which isn't very expensive. They come in packs of 3 or 5 at the store. And the emitters have a connection on one end that hooks to the 1/4 inch tubing, and attached to the emitter that you take off and hook to the other end of the 1/4 inch tubing is a device that actually allows you to plug into the 1/2 inch. Using a tool such as this, you can poke a hole in the 1/2 inch and then push that 1/4 inch tubing right into it, and away you go. If you make a mistake we have what we call a goof plug. Looks like this. It's round. It's barbed on the other end, and in the hole that you want to seal, you just push this in until you hear a pop, and it'll seal the hole. There's another type just like this, serves the same purpose. Plugs the hole. They're called goof plugs. I've used quite a bit because I make mistakes occasionally, or I need to take that 1/4-inch tube and then move it somewhere else. So there are all kinds of heads to do all kinds of things. We talked about the small emitter, which is good for an individual plant. You can regulate the flow, great for things like tomatoes and roses and things like that. Out in your yard though, out in the lawn, you're going to see some other things, such as these pop-up heads. In this particular case, a lot of people don't understand how they work and do their magic. So let me go through that with you and eliminate any of the mystery about how these things operate. Once again, underground, you're probably going to have some PVC piping run over it, and then a T coming up. And this could be the T right here, and it'll have a male or a female fitting on the end of it. Just come in. This will be about maybe 6 inches under the ground, about the length of the pop-up head. So this head just screws into it, just like that. And then when the motorized valve opens up and the water's flowing, the water pressure pushes it here and allows the head to pop up out of the ground, and then it sprays the water. So it's pretty straightforward. If for some reason, this one's like a 90-degree to 120-degree spread on the spray. If you want to change that to say 180 degrees or 360, you can change out these heads just by merely unscrewing it and going to the store and buying a new one of these that then screws back in here, and you've got it covered. Notice there's a filter in here to prevent grit and whatnot getting into the spray head itself. So you may want to periodically take these off, clean them up, put them back in. If for some reason that over time or whatever, maybe the lawnmower bumping into it or something, that the spray angle is not what it's supposed to be, all you got to do is take this knob at top and just turn it until you get your angle the way you want it. Likewise, if you need water to flow further or shorter, there's a small screw right on top. You can screw that in or screw it out, and it will increase or decrease the amount of spray that you get. So nothing magic about this. Inside this thing, also no magic to it. It's basically just a spring and a tube, and they just fit together just like that. So you can take these things apart. You can replace them. If you need to replace this whole thing for some reason, maybe it broke, then just turn off your water, unscrew it below ground. You'll have to dig a hole down about 6 inches, and then unscrew this and screw in the new one. Make your adjustments to get them right, and away you go. Just make sure when you take this off and you're replacing it that you don't let any dirt get down in that hole, or that dirt's going to go up into your spray head and kind of mess you up. So you don't want to do that. Let's talk about maintenance for a second. You need to inspect the system frequently, at least once a month. Most of the time our systems are on at night, and we don't see what's happening. So during the day, turn that system on and put it on manual and get it going so that each station comes on about 2 or 3 minutes to give you time to make sure that the system's working right or any adjustments are needed. So that gives you a good opportunity to make sure that water's flowing to all the right places and the spray is at the right angles and the right distance and whatnot. I always carry like a repair kit with me, and I have mine right here. I've got all sorts of stuff inside. I've got my tool for making a hole in the 1/2 inch if I need to move or add an emitter. I've got all sorts of things in there. I've got spare emitters, spare tubing, cutters, and things like that. So goof plugs, don't forget those things. So anyway, timely repairs and maintenance is a good good thing to do. And when you're doing all this, don't get in a big hurry. Just kind of take your time, make sure you analyze and see what's happening. Also, when you're making repairs or making a modification to the system, such as adding another emitter because you put in another plant, try not to mix the parts and pieces. If you buy all your stuff from one store, you probably come out better. Some of the various brands, for example, the 1/4-inch tubing, some of the brands, the diameter is just a hair different, and it might mess you up trying to put things together. Also, I like the very flexible tubing. Some of the brands are a lot stiffer, harder to work with. So when you get in the, especially the 1/4-inch tubing, make sure that you check it and make sure that it's nice and flexible. If you're making modifications and hooking up another emitter, if you think 10 or 12 inches is enough to get from the 1/2 inch to the plant, add another 3 or 4 inches to it. It doesn't cost you but about a penny or two to do that, and it'll save you a lot of heartache down the road in case you need to move it around. You've got plenty of tubing to do that. So once again, when you're testing, go to your controller, probably in your garage, set it on manual, and then follow the directions. Most of them are very straightforward, very straightforward. And when you're putting in plants and you're making modifications or repairs and you're digging in the dirt, make sure you're very careful. Underground, where you can't see it, you have the 1/2 inch tubing, you've got PVC pipe, and you've got the electric wiring that goes to the control valves, and that's really very important. These wires usually are red and white, and if you nick one of those things and your motorized valve doesn't work anymore, then your system's not going to come on. So if you're digging in the dirt around any of these areas where there's irrigation, make sure you dig very slowly, very carefully, and don't nick any wires, don't puncture any tubing, and break any PVC pipe. A little bit of slowness going in will save you a lot of heartache down the line. Also, know where all your motorized valves are. That's important. If you, on installation or modification, if somebody's doing this for you, see if they'll provide a sketch as to where everything is. If not, photos come in handy. Make some photos as you're digging around so you'll know where the pipes and the wiring and things like that are. That's about all I have for this session.